The mountain air was cold against Park Ji-hoon's face as he climbed higher into the restricted zone. He knew he shouldn't be here. The old mining area had been closed for 15 years, and the government had put up warning signs everywhere. But Ji-hoon had grown up in these mountains. He knew every trail and every hidden path. Today, he was searching for rare medicinal herbs that only grew at high altitudes. The sound came first, a deep rumbling that made the ground shake under his boots. Ji-hoon looked up and saw something burning across the sky. It wasn't a plane or a helicopter. The object was moving too fast and glowing too bright. He watched as it crashed somewhere beyond the next ridge, sending up a plume of black smoke. Ji-hoon's medical training kicked in immediately. Someone might be hurt. He adjusted his backpack, which always carried emergency supplies, and started running toward the crash site. His legs burned as he pushed through thick brush and climbed over fallen logs. The smell of burning metal grew stronger with each step. When he reached the crash site, Ji-hoon stopped and stared. The wreckage wasn't from any aircraft he recognized. The metal was smooth and dark, covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow faintly. Parts of it were still smoking. In the center of the destruction was what looked like an escape pod, partially buried in the dirt. Ji-hoon approached carefully. His heart was pounding. He had seen enough science fiction movies to know what this might be, but his rational mind refused to believe it. Not until he looked through the cracked window of the pod. Inside was a woman. At least, she looked like a woman at first glance. But her skin had a slight blue tint, and her features were too sharp, too perfect to be human. Her hair was long and silver, matted with something that looked like blood but had a purple color. She was wearing some kind of armor that had been badly damaged. Her eyes were closed. Ji-hoon's medical instincts overrode his fear. Injured meant he needed to help. He found the release mechanism on the pod's door and pulled it open. The woman fell forward slightly, and he caught her. She was lighter than he expected, but still solid and real in his arms. He laid her down carefully on the ground and began his assessment. She was breathing, but barely. Her left arm hung at an odd angle, clearly broken. Burns covered her shoulder and part of her neck. The purple blood was oozing from several cuts across her torso. Ji-hoon had treated battlefield injuries during his military service, but never anything like this. He opened his medical kit and pulled out bandages, antiseptic, and splinting materials. His hands moved automatically, following years of training. He started with the burns, applying gel that should work regardless of her biology. The chemical burns looked serious, and he worried about infection. As he worked on cleaning the wounds on her arms, her eyes suddenly opened. They were golden, like a cat's eyes, and they fixed on him with startling intensity. Before Ji-hoon could react, her hand shot out and grabbed both of his wrists. Her grip was incredibly strong, despite her injuries. Ji-hoon froze. His first instinct was to pull away, but something stopped him. Her eyes weren't showing anger or fear. They were searching, studying him. Her golden gaze seemed to look right through him, reading something deeper than his surface thoughts. Several seconds passed in silence. Ji-hoon could feel his pulse racing under her fingers. Then, just as suddenly as she had grabbed him, she let go. Her expression softened slightly, and she gave a small nod. She said something in a language that sounded like wind chimes and flowing water, then closed her eyes again. Ji-hoon sat back, his hands shaking slightly. What had just happened? It felt like she had been testing him somehow, deciding whether he was a threat, and apparently he had passed. He continued his work with renewed focus. The broken arm needed to be set and splinted. He gave her an injection of painkiller, hoping her biology would accept it. She didn't react, remaining unconscious or close to it. He wrapped her burns carefully and stitched the worst of her cuts with practiced precision. As he worked, Ji-hoon's mind raced. This was an alien, a real alien, from another world, and she had crashed here in the mountains he knew so well. Why? Was she running from something? And more importantly, How long before someone else found this crash site? The government would send people. The military would come. They would take her away, lock her up, study her. The thought made him uncomfortable. She was injured and vulnerable. Whatever she was, whoever she was, she needed medical care, not imprisonment. Ji-hoon made a decision that would change his life. He couldn't leave her here. His cabin was 3 kilometers away, deep in the forest where nobody ever went. He could hide her there, at least until she was stable enough to explain what had happened. He fashioned a stretcher from branches and a tarp from his bag. Moving her onto it as carefully as possible, he began the long journey back to his cabin. The alien woman was unconscious, her breathing steady now, but still weak. Ji-hoon pulled the stretcher slowly, stopping often to rest and to check her condition. The sun was setting when he finally reached his cabin. It was a simple place, one room with a wood stove and basic furniture. But it had a good medical setup because Ji-hoon often treated injuries from hikers and hunters who got into trouble in the mountains. He brought her inside and laid her on his bed. The cabin was warm, heated by the stove. He checked her bandages and found some bleeding had soaked through. He changed them carefully, working by lamplight. As he finished, Ji-hoon heard something in the distance, helicopter blades. They were already searching. He quickly covered the windows with blankets and turned off all the lights except for one small lamp. The sound grew louder, then slowly faded as the helicopter moved to another area. Ji-hoon sat down in his chair and looked at the alien woman sleeping in his bed. He had committed now. He was hiding her from the authorities. He was harboring an extraterrestrial being. It was probably illegal in ways he couldn't even imagine. But as he watched her breathe, watched her chest rise and fall, he knew he had made the right choice. She was alive. She was someone's daughter, maybe someone's friend. She deserved a chance to heal before facing whatever came next. Ji-hoon stood up and checked his supplies. It was going to be a long night. He had a feeling it would be the first of many. Ji-hoon didn't sleep that night. He sat by the bed, checking the alien woman's pulse every 20 minutes. Her heartbeat was faster than a human's, almost like a bird's rapid flutter. But it was steady, and that was good. Her skin temperature ran cooler than his, which worried him at first, until he realized it might be normal for her species. Around 3 in the morning, she stirred. Her golden eyes opened slowly, and she looked around the cabin with confusion. When her gaze found Ji-hoon, she tensed. "It's okay," Ji-hoon said softly, holding up his hands. "You're safe here. I treated your wounds. Do you understand me?" She stared at him for a long moment, then reached for something on her belt. Ji-hoon noticed a small damaged device clipped there. She pressed it, and the device made a weak crackling sound. Then, to his amazement, it spoke in Korean. "Where am I?" The voice was mechanical, but clear. "You're in my cabin, in the mountains. You crashed nearby. I found you and brought you here." Ji-hoon spoke slowly, hoping the device could translate. The woman tried to sit up, but gasped in pain. Ji-hoon moved quickly to help her, adjusting the pillows behind her back. She looked down at her bandaged wounds, then back at him. "You helped me. Why?" The translator crackled between her words. "You were hurt. I'm a medic. It's what I do." Ji-hoon shrugged like it was the simplest thing in the world. She studied him again with those intense, golden eyes. "My people would not do the same. Not for a stranger, not for an enemy." "Am I your enemy?" Ji-hoon asked. She was quiet for a moment. "I do not know what you are. Your species is new to me. This planet was not my destination." "What's your name?" Ji-hoon asked, pulling up a chair to sit beside the bed. "Valara." The name came through the translator with a slight musical quality. I was, a medical officer in the Talrith fleet. I'm Park Ji-hoon, and it sounds like we have something in common. I'm a medic too." Valara's expression shifted slightly. It might have been surprise. "You are a healer? Among your people?" "Yes. I was a combat medic in the military. Now, I work as a wilderness guide and treat people who get injured in the mountains. Ji-hoon gestured around the cabin. This is my home. Then that is why, Valara said quietly. When you touched me at the crash site, my people, we can sense intention through contact. I felt your desire to heal. It is why I allowed you to continue. Ji-hoon remembered that moment when she had seized his hands. You were checking if I was trustworthy. Yes, and you are. She looked down at her hands. I need to tell you something. There are people searching for me. Your people and mine. I cannot stay here without putting you in danger. Why are they looking for you? What happened? Valara's face showed pain that wasn't physical. I discovered something terrible. My commanders, the leaders of my fleet, they are planning an attack on your world. A biological weapon designed to weaken your species before invasion. I stole the evidence. I tried to escape, to warn you, but they shot down my ship. Ji-hoon felt his blood run cold. An attack? When? Soon. Weeks, perhaps. The weapon is already being transported in a vessel that pretends to be peaceful. A diplomatic mission, they call it. Valara's voice was bitter through the translator. I could not let it happen, even if it made me a traitor. Before Ji-hoon could respond, he heard a vehicle approaching. His heart jumped. Nobody came out here except for one person. Stay quiet, he whispered to Valara. Don't move. He quickly pulled a curtain across the corner where the bed was, creating a hidden area. Then he went to the door just as someone knocked. Ji-hoon, open up! I know you're in there. He opened the door to find Kim Daeyeon standing on his porch. She wore her park ranger uniform and had her hands on her hips. Her face showed both concern and suspicion. Daeyeon, what are you doing here? Ji-hoon tried to sound casual. What am I doing here? There's a military operation happening all over this mountain, and you live right in the middle of it. I came to check on you. She pushed past him into the cabin. Are you okay? You look terrible. I'm fine. Just didn't sleep well. The helicopters were loud. Daeyeon looked around the cabin with sharp eyes. She had known Ji-hoon since they were children. They had grown up in the village at the base of these mountains together. She knew when he was lying. What's going on, Ji-hoon? And don't tell me nothing. I've seen the military moving equipment like they're preparing for war. They won't tell me anything except to stay out of certain areas. She walked further into the cabin, and Ji-hoon's heart raced. One of the soldiers mentioned they were looking for something that crashed. Some kind of experimental aircraft. I don't know anything about that, Ji-hoon said, moving to block her path toward the curtain. Daeyeon stopped and looked at him directly. You're hiding something. I can always tell. She stepped around him and pulled back the curtain before he could stop her. For a moment, nobody moved. Daeyeon stared at Valara lying in the bed. Her blue-tinted skin and silver hair, unmistakable even in the dim light. The bandages covering her injuries were clearly visible. Ji-hoon, Daeyeon said slowly, not taking her eyes off Valara. Please tell me this is not what I think it is. I can explain, Ji-hoon started. That's an alien, a real alien, in your bed. Daeyeon's voice was rising. The military is searching for an alien that crashed, and you have her hidden in your cabin. Valara spoke through her translator. Please, I mean no harm. Ji-hoon saved my life. Daeyeon jumped at the sound of the mechanical voice. She looked between Ji-hoon and Valara several times. Then she walked to the door, and Ji-hoon's heart sank. But she didn't leave. She closed the door firmly and locked it. Then she turned around and leaned against it. I need you to tell me everything. Right now. No lies. Daeyeon's face was serious. Because if I'm going to help you hide an alien from the military, I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. You're going to help? Ji-hoon was stunned. I've been watching the military operation. The commander in charge, Yoon Taejin, he's brought in special equipment. Weapons that look like they're designed to hurt, not capture. And he's been ordering his people to shoot on sight if they find what they're looking for. Daeyeon crossed her arms. I don't trust him. I don't trust any of this. But I trust you, Ji-hoon. So talk. Ji-hoon and Valara spent the next hour telling Daeon everything. About the crash, about the invasion plan, about the biological weapon. Daeon listened without interrupting, her face growing more serious with each detail. When they finished, she was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "We need help, real help. Someone who understands alien biology and technology." She looked at Valara's wounds, "And someone who can decode whatever evidence you're carrying?" "I don't know anyone like that," Ji-hoon said. "I do." Daeon pulled out her phone. "There's a scientist who used to work for the government's xenobiology research program, Lee Min-ho. He was brilliant, but he had a falling out with his superiors. Now, he lives alone about 10 kilometers from here. He's strange and difficult, but if anyone can help, it's him." "Will he help us?" Ji-hoon asked. "Only one way to find out." Daeon started typing a message. "But first, we need to move her. This cabin isn't safe anymore. I know a place. The old mining facility has underground bunkers that nobody remembers. We can hide there while we figure out what to do next." Ji-hoon looked at Valara, who nodded weakly. They were committed now, all three of them, against the military, against the alien empire, against impossible odds. But they had something important. They had the truth, and they had each other. Outside, the sound of helicopters grew closer again. Daeon moved to the window and peeked through the blanket covering it. "We need to move fast," she said. "They're expanding the search grid. We have maybe an hour before they reach this area." Ji-hoon began gathering supplies while Daeon helped Valara prepare to travel. The alien woman was weak but determined. As Ji-hoon packed his medical equipment, he realized that his quiet life in the mountains was over. Whatever came next, there was no going back. But looking at Valara, remembering that moment when she had tested him and found him worthy of trust, he knew he would make the same choice again. The old mining bunker smelled of rust and dampness. Daeon led them through a hidden entrance that she had discovered years ago during her ranger training. The tunnel went deep into the mountain, far below the search radius of the military helicopters. Emergency lights still worked, casting everything in a weak yellow glow. They set up in what had been a supervisor's office. It had a door that could be locked and enough space for them to move around. Ji-hoon made a bed for Valara using old blankets that Daeon had stored here. The alien woman was exhausted from the journey. Her breathing labored. "I'll get Min-ho," Daeon said, checking her phone. He agreed to come, but he wasn't happy about it. Said, "I owe him a favor." "What kind of favor?" Ji-hoon asked as he checked Valara's bandages. "The kind I don't want to think about right now." Daeon smiled grimly. "He's strange, but he's good at what he does. Just don't take anything he says personally. He has no social skills." After Daeon left, Ji-hoon sat with Valara in the quiet bunker. The translator device was running low on power, so they communicated mostly through gestures and expressions. But somehow, it felt natural. He showed her how to drink water from a bottle. She showed him where her species kept their major organs, pointing to areas that were different from human anatomy. "Your people," Valara said through the crackling translator, conserving its battery. "They are kind, even when afraid. I did not expect this." "Not all of us are kind," Ji-hoon admitted. "The ones searching for you, they won't be gentle. My people are the same. We were not always warriors." Valara looked sad. Long ago, the Talrith valued healing and science. We explored to learn, not conquer. But the military faction grew powerful. They changed us, made us afraid of others, made us want to strike first. "That's why you ran?" Ji-hoon said. "You remember what your people used to be." "Yes, and I could not let them destroy another civilization." She looked at him with those golden eyes. "Your species is young, fragile, but I have seen something in you, in Daeon. A strength that is not about weapons or power. A strength of compassion." Before Ji-hoon could respond, he heard voices in the tunnel. He tensed, but relaxed when he recognized Daeon's voice. She entered with a man in his early 40s who looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was messy, His clothes wrinkled, and he carried a large bag of equipment. "This is Lee Minho," Dayan introduced. "Minho, this is Ji-hun, and, well, you can see." Minho stared at Valara with an expression of pure shock. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. It was the first genuine emotion Ji-hun had seen from him. "Incredible," Minho whispered. He dropped his bag and approached slowly, like he was afraid she might disappear. "A living, breathing extraterrestrial, and she's a biped, carbon-based, by the look of it, but with clear evolutionary differences." He looked at Ji-hun. "May I examine her?" Valara nodded, understanding the intent even without translation. Minho spent the next 30 minutes conducting a thorough examination, taking samples with Valara's permission and muttering observations to himself. His hands were gentle despite his excitement. "Her physiology is remarkable," Minho said finally. "The cellular structure is more efficient than ours. She heals faster, processes toxins better, and her neural pathways are more complex. But she's suffering from internal damage that your field medicine couldn't address." He looked at Ji-hun with respect. "Though you did an excellent job keeping her alive, most people would have killed her accidentally with the wrong treatment." "Can you help her?" Ji-hun asked. "Maybe. I'll need to synthesize something specific to her biology. It'll take time." Minho pulled out a laptop from his bag. "But first, Dayon told me about the data you're carrying. The information about this weapon, we need to see it." Valara reached into a pocket in her damaged armor and pulled out a small crystal device. She handed it to Minho, who held it up to the light. "This is Talrith data storage technology," Minho said with wonder. "I've only seen pictures. Never thought I'd hold one." He connected it to his laptop using an adapter he built on the spot. This might take a while to decrypt. They waited as Minho worked. The bunker was silent, except for the tapping of keys and Minho's occasional muttering. Ji-hun gave Valara more water and checked her temperature. She was running a slight fever now, which worried him. After 2 hours, Minho sat back. His face had gone pale. "This is worse than you described," he said quietly. "Much worse." Dayon moved closer. "Show us." Minho turned the laptop so they could see. The screen showed complex diagrams and text that the computer was attempting to translate, but the images were clear enough. A biological agent, infection vectors, projected casualty rates. "They call it the silencer," Minho explained. "It's designed to attack human neural pathways. It won't kill quickly. Instead, it causes progressive paralysis over several weeks. Victims remain conscious but lose all motor function. Eventually, they can't breathe." He paused. "The estimated death rate is 95% of the global population." The room went silent. Ji-hun felt sick. "There's more," Minho continued. "The weapon is already in orbit around Earth. It's aboard a Talrith vessel that arrived 2 weeks ago claiming to be a diplomatic research ship. They're scheduled to release atmospheric probes in 5 days. Those probes contain the silencer." "5 days," Dayon whispered. "We have 5 days to stop this." "We need to tell someone," Ji-hun said. "The government, the military, anyone who can do something." "Who?" Minho asked harshly. "Who's going to believe us? We have an alien defector, a disgraced scientist, a park ranger, and a mountain medic. We have no credibility." "We have proof," Valara said through her translator, which Minho had connected to his laptop's power. "This data is authentic. Your scientists can verify it." "If we can get anyone to look at it," Dayon said. She was pacing now, thinking. "The military commander, Taejin, he's the problem. He's not interested in listening. He wants to capture Valara and use her for intelligence. He's also paranoid." Minho added, "I knew him when I worked for the government. He sees threats everywhere. He won't believe that an alien is trying to help humanity. He'll assume it's a trick." "Then we go around him," Ji-hun said. "There must be someone higher up, someone who can authorize action." "The president," Dayon said, "Choi Ji-won. She's known for being rational and listening to evidence." But getting to her, she trailed off. "It's impossible," Minho finished. "We're being hunted." The moment we surface, Taijin's people will grab us. Valara spoke up, her voice weak but determined. There is another way. I can contact others of my kind. Not all Talriths support the invasion. There are those who question the military leadership. If I can reach them, they might help us stop the weapon. How? Ji-hoon asked. Your ship was destroyed. The communications array in my escape pod. If it survived the crash, I can use it to send an encrypted message. Valara looked at Minho. But I would need help repairing it. And retrieving it? The pod is still at the crash site, Daeon said, which is now in the middle of the military search zone. They've probably already found it. Then we need to get it back, Ji-hoon said simply. Everyone looked at him like he was crazy. You want to walk into a military operation and steal evidence? Minho asked. Yes. Ji-hoon looked at each of them, because in 5 days, billions of people will die if we don't do something. We can't wait for permission. We can't hope someone else will fix this. It has to be us. Daeon was quiet for a moment. Then she started laughing. Not a happy laugh, but the kind of laugh that comes when you realize how insane your situation is. We're actually going to do this, aren't we? She shook her head. Okay. I know the patrol schedules. I know where they've set up their command post. If we move at night, we might be able to reach the crash site. I can create a diversion, Minho offered. I've been working on some experimental drones. Nothing fancy, but enough to draw attention away from your insertion point. I should go alone, Ji-hoon said. It's too dangerous for everyone. No, Valara said firmly. I must go. I am the only one who knows which components are necessary, and if we encounter my people, I can communicate with them. You can barely walk, Ji-hoon protested. Then you will help me. Valara met his eyes. We do this together, or not at all? Daeon sighed. I'm coming too. You'll need someone who knows the terrain and can talk your way past any civilian authorities. Minho nodded. And I'll coordinate from here. Someone needs to monitor communications and be ready to run if things go wrong. They spent the rest of the day planning. Minho worked on treating Valara's internal injuries with a synthesized compound that seemed to help. Her fever went down, and her breathing became easier. Meanwhile, Daeon drew maps and timed patrol routes. Ji-hoon prepared supplies for the mission. As night fell, they gathered at the bunker entrance. Valara was standing now, leaning on Ji-hoon for support. She was still weak, but there was determination in her golden eyes. If we succeed, Valara said quietly, it will be because of humanity's refusal to surrender to fear. Because you chose to trust me when you had every reason not to. You risked everything to warn us, Ji-hoon replied. We're just returning the favor. Daeon checked her watch. Patrol change is in 10 minutes. That's our window. Everyone ready? They nodded. Minho activated his drones, sending them in different directions to create false sensor readings. Daeon led the way out of the bunker, moving silently through the dark forest. Ji-hoon supported Valara, matching her pace. Above them, the stars shone bright and cold. Somewhere up there was the weapon that could end human civilization. But down here, in the darkness of the mountain forest, 4 unlikely allies moved toward hope. They had no authority, no army, no backup plan, but they had each other, and they had the truth. Sometimes that had to be enough. The forest was alive with sounds. Every snap of a branch made Ji-hoon's heart race. He kept one arm around Valara, feeling her weight against him as they moved through the darkness. Daeon led them along paths that didn't exist on any map, routes she had discovered during years of patrolling these mountains. They could hear the military in the distance, voices calling out positions, the hum of equipment, bright searchlights cutting through the trees. But Daeon's knowledge of the terrain kept them hidden, moving through blind spots in the search grid. It took them 2 hours to reach the crash site. The area was lit up like daytime with portable lights. Soldiers moved around the wreckage, taking samples and documenting everything. Ji-hoon counted at least 20 people, maybe more. This is impossible, Daeon whispered. There's no way we can get close. Valara pointed to the escape pod, which had been moved to one side of the site. That is what we need. The communications array is built into the lower hull, if we can access it. Wait, Ji-hoon said. Look at that soldier, the one standing apart from the others. A woman in an officer's uniform stood near the escape pod. She wasn't working on anything, she was just watching. And unlike the others, she kept looking toward the forest, like she was expecting someone. That's Han Sumin, Daeon said with surprise. She's an intelligence officer. I've met her before at briefings. She's different from the others, less aggressive. As they watched, Sumin pulled out her phone and appeared to send a message. Moments later, Daeon's phone vibrated silently in her pocket. She pulled it out carefully, shielding the light. The message read, I know you're out there. The commander is planning something terrible. We need to talk. Come to the north side of the perimeter. I'll create an opening. It's a trap, Ji-hoon said immediately. Maybe, Daeon replied, but maybe not. I met Sumin 2 years ago during a joint exercise. She asked a lot of questions about ethics and rules of engagement. She seemed uncomfortable with some of the orders she was getting. We don't have many options, Valara said weakly, and we are running out of time. Daeon made a decision. Ji-hoon, stay here with Valara. I'll go talk to Sumin. If it's a trap, run. Don't wait for me. Before Ji-hoon could argue, Daeon was moving through the forest toward the north side of the perimeter. Ji-hoon held Valara close, watching the lights and trying to control his breathing. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, he saw Daeon reappear at the edge of the forest. She wasn't alone. Sumin was with her. The officer looked around nervously, then followed Daeon to where Ji-hoon and Valara were hiding. Up close, Sumin's face showed stress and exhaustion. She looked at Valara with wide eyes, but didn't seem afraid. Instead, she seemed sad. You're really trying to help us? Sumin said quietly. Aren't you? Valara nodded. I am, but your commander Taijin does not believe me. Taijin doesn't believe anyone, Sumin said bitterly. He's convinced this is all a trick. He's been given authorization to use lethal force if necessary. He wants to dissect you, study you as a specimen. He doesn't care about warnings or evidence. What changed your mind? Daeon asked. Why are you helping us? Sumin pulled out a tablet. Because I intercepted some of the data from the escape pod's computer before it was completely locked down. I had it translated by our AI systems. I saw the files about the silencer, the projected casualties, and I realized that if there's even a chance she's telling the truth, we can't ignore it. She handed the tablet to Ji-hoon. The screen showed more of the Talrith data, including timelines and deployment strategies. I tried to bring this to Taijin, Sumin continued. He dismissed it, said it was obviously faked, that no alien would betray their own species to help humans. He's ordered the escape pod to be transported to a secure facility tomorrow morning. Once it's gone, you'll lose your only chance to contact anyone who might help. Then we take it tonight, Ji-hoon said. Can you help us? Sumin hesitated. If I help you, I'm finished. My career, my life, everything. Taijin will make sure I'm charged with treason. I know what you're risking, Valara said softly. I gave up everything too. My home, my people, my honor in their eyes. But some choices are worth any cost. Sumin looked at the alien woman for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, here's what we'll do. In 1 hour, there's a shift change. Most of the guards will move to the command post for briefing. That leaves only a skeleton crew here. I can create a distraction that pulls them away from the escape pod. You'll have maybe 10 minutes. 10 minutes to remove the communications array and get away, Daeon said. That's tight. It's all I can give you. Sumin checked her watch. I need to get back before I'm missed. The shift change happens at 2300 hours. Be ready. She disappeared back into the forest. Ji-hoon, Daeon, and Valara waited in silence. The night grew colder. Valara was shivering despite the jacket Ji-hoon had wrapped around her. Her wounds were taking a toll, and the strain of the journey showed on her face. "Are you strong enough for this?" Ji-hoon asked quietly. "I have to be," Valara replied. "Many will die if I am not." When the hour had passed, they saw the change happen exactly as Sumin had described. Soldiers began moving toward the command post, which was a tent setup about 200 meters away. Only 3 guards remained near the escape pod. Then, smoke began pouring from the command post. People started shouting. Fire alarms sounded. All 3 guards ran toward the emergency, leaving the escape pod unguarded. Now, Dayan hissed. They moved quickly across the open ground. Valara directed Ji-hoon to a panel on the underside of the pod. His hands shook as he pried it open with a tool from his pack. Inside was a mess of alien technology that looked nothing like human electronics. "Here," Valara said, pointing to a specific component. "This is the array. We must remove it carefully. If the power cell is damaged, it will be useless." Ji-hoon worked with practiced precision, treating the alien technology like he would treat a delicate injury. Slow, steady, careful. Valara guided him through each step, her voice weak but clear. Dayan kept watch, her eyes scanning for any sign of returning guards. "They're coming back," Dayan warned. "Hurry." "Almost there," Ji-hoon muttered. One more connection to disconnect. His fingers worked at the coupling. It wouldn't budge. "Ji-hoon," Dayan said urgently, "we have maybe 30 seconds. Ji-hoon pulled harder. The coupling suddenly released, and the communications array came free in his hands. It was about the size of a laptop, but weighed almost nothing. "Got it. Let's move." They ran back toward the forest, just as the guards returned to their posts. Someone shouted behind them. A flashlight beam swept across the trees, narrowly missing them as they dove into cover. "They know something happened," Dayan said as they ran through the forest. "The whole area is going to be locked down." They could hear vehicles starting up behind them. The search was intensifying. But Dayan knew these mountains in ways the military never could. She led them through a ravine, then up a rocky slope where vehicles couldn't follow. By the time they reached the bunker entrance, they were all exhausted. Minho was waiting for them, his face anxious. When he saw the communications array, he smiled. "You actually did it. You crazy people actually did it." They collapsed inside the bunker. Ji-hoon immediately checked Valara's condition. Her wounds had reopened slightly from the exertion. He treated them while Minho examined the communications array. "This is beautiful," Minho said with genuine awe. "The engineering is decades beyond our technology, but I think I can power it. Give me a few hours." Those hours felt endless. Ji-hoon stayed with Valara, who was barely conscious now. Her body was fighting hard to heal, but the strain of the mission had been too much. He held her hand, feeling her pulse flutter under his fingers. "Stay with me," he whispered. "We're so close." Valara's eyes opened slightly. "Your species," she said weakly through the translator. "So determined, so brave. I understand now why my people fear you." "Fear us?" Ji-hoon was surprised. "Not because you are strong, but because you do not give up, even when facing certain death. That terrifies those who value power above all else." She squeezed his hand weakly. "Ji-hoon, if I do not survive this, you must promise me something." "Don't talk like that. Promise me you will continue. Find others who will listen. Stop the weapon. Save your people." Her golden eyes held his. "Promise." "I promise. But you're going to survive. You're going to see this through with us." Before Valara could respond, Minho called out, "I've got it working. The array is powered and ready to transmit." Dayan helped Valara sit up. The alien woman took the control interface from Minho, her fingers moving across symbols that glowed softly. She composed a message in her language, then activated the transmission. "Now we wait," she said. "If there are any Talrith nearby who sympathize with my cause, they will respond." They waited in tense silence. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Ji-hoon was starting to lose hope when the array suddenly lit up with activity. Valara's face showed shock, then relief. They answered. 3 ships. They are dissidents, opposed to the invasion. They are willing to help us. That's great, Minho said, but we still need to convince our own people to work with them. And we need to do it in 3 days, Daeon reminded them. The weapon deployment is still on schedule. Ji-hoon looked at his friends, at Valara, who had sacrificed everything to warn humanity, at the alien technology glowing softly in the bunker's dim light. They had come so far, but the hardest part was still ahead. Then we go to Seoul, he said. We go directly to the president. We show her everything, and we make her understand that this isn't about fear or distrust. It's about survival. For both our species, that's insane, Minho said. How do we even get to Seoul with the military hunting us? Daeon smiled. I might have an idea about that. It's risky, but everything we've done so far has been risky. They spent the rest of the night planning. Valara's condition stabilized with the medicine Minho had synthesized. The Talrith dissidents sent detailed information about the weapon's vulnerabilities and how to disable it. Everything was coming together. As dawn approached, Ji-hoon looked at Valara resting on the makeshift bed. She had trusted him with her life when she had every reason to fear humans. She had shown him that compassion and courage could exist anywhere in the universe. Now, it was time to show the world what she had shown him, that the future didn't have to be written in fear and violence, that there was another way. Valara's recovery over the next 2 days was remarkable. The medicine Minho had created seemed to work with her alien biology in ways that surprised even him. Her wounds closed faster than should be possible. Her strength returned. Her skin regained its natural shimmer. But more than physical healing was happening in that bunker. Ji-hoon spent hours with her, learning about the Talrith civilization. She told him stories of her home world, a planet with 2 suns, where the oceans were green and the sky shifted between purple and gold. She described cities that floated on magnetic fields and forests where the trees communicated through root networks. She talked about her family, her parents who were scientists, her younger brother who dreamed of being an artist. We were not always warriors, Valara said one evening as Ji-hoon changed her bandages for what he hoped would be the last time. My people valued knowledge and beauty. We explored the universe to understand it, not conquer it. But then came the fracture. What was that? Ji-hoon asked, carefully wrapping clean cloth around her arm. A civil war. Those who believed in peaceful exploration fought against those who wanted to expand through force. The military faction won. They convinced our people that the universe was dangerous, that we had to strike first or be destroyed. Fear became our culture. Aggression became our identity. She looked sad. I grew up in that world. I was trained to be a soldier before I could choose what I wanted to be. But you chose to be a healer, Ji-hoon said. Yes, despite everything, I chose to save lives rather than take them. My superiors never understood. They said compassion was weakness, that mercy was a flaw to be trained out of us. She met his eyes. Then I met you, a human who risked everything to help a stranger, an enemy even. And I realized my people were wrong. Compassion is not weakness. It is the strongest thing in the universe. Ji-hoon felt his chest tighten with emotion. I just did what anyone should do. No, Valara said firmly. Most would not. Most would have left me to die or turned me over to your authorities. But you saw a person in need, and you helped. That is not common. That is extraordinary. In the corner, Minho was working on his laptop, analyzing the data from the Talrith dissidents. He had barely slept in 2 days. Daeon came and went, using her ranger position to monitor military movements and smuggle in supplies. And Suman sent encrypted messages when she could, keeping them informed of Commander Taejin's actions. The news from Suman was troubling. Taejin had become obsessed with finding them. He had tripled the search grid and was using advanced scanning equipment. More concerning, he had received authorization to use lethal force. He was telling his superiors that Valara was extremely dangerous, that she had mind control abilities and had manipulated civilians into helping her. He's building a narrative, Dayon said after reading the latest message, making you into a monster so he can justify anything he does. It is what my leaders did to your people, Valara said quietly. They told us humans were primitive and violent, that you would attack us if given the chance. They created fear to justify their actions. On the second night, Minho made a breakthrough. I've finished analyzing everything. The weapon, the deployment method, the vulnerabilities, and I've confirmed what the Talrith dissidents told us. He turned his laptop so they could see. The silencer can be stopped, but only if we act before it's released. Once it enters the atmosphere, it becomes impossible to contain. How do we stop it? Ji-hoon asked. The weapon requires a specific activation sequence. It's controlled from the diplomatic vessel in orbit. If we can get someone aboard that ship to disrupt the sequence, the weapon becomes inert. Minho pulled up a schematic. But here's the problem. The ship is heavily guarded, and it requires Talrith biometric access to reach the weapon control systems. Everyone looked at Valara. You would need to go, Dayon said. You're the only one who can access those systems. It's a suicide mission, Minho added bluntly. Security will be extreme. Even if you disable the weapon, getting out alive is nearly impossible. Valara was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. I will do it. I must do it. This is my responsibility. No, Ji-hoon said immediately. There has to be another way. There is not, Valara said calmly. And I made peace with this possibility when I first stole the data. Some things are worth dying for. But Ji-hoon started. The bunker suddenly shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. They heard a distant rumbling sound. Explosions, Dayon said, her face going pale. They're using seismic charges to map the underground structures. Minho's laptop suddenly showed multiple alerts. They found us. They know we're down here. How? Ji-hoon demanded. The communications array, Minho said, his face full of regret. The transmission we sent. They must have been monitoring for any Talrith signals. They triangulated our position. The rumbling grew louder, closer. They could hear vehicles above them now, voices shouting orders, the sound of equipment being moved into position. We need to evacuate, Dayon said. There's another exit on the far side of the bunker system. It comes out near the old railway line. If we move now, a massive explosion rocked the bunker. Part of the ceiling collapsed, blocking their path deeper into the facility. Dust and debris filled the air. When it cleared, they realized they were trapped. The main entrance was the only way out, and it would lead them straight into military hands. New plan, Dayon said, coughing from the dust. We fight our way out. With what weapons? Minho asked. We have nothing. Valara stood up. Her movements were fluid now. Her injuries healed enough for action. I am a trained warrior. I can handle combat, but I need you all to trust me. What are you going to do? Ji-hoon asked. What I was trained to do. Before I became a healer, I was one of the best fighters in my unit. She looked at each of them. Stay behind me. Do exactly as I say. And when I tell you to run, you run. Understood? They nodded. Valara moved to the bunker entrance, her body falling into a combat stance that looked both graceful and deadly. Ji-hoon realized he had only seen her as a patient, someone who needed protection. But now, he saw what she really was. A warrior who had chosen a different path. The bunker door exploded inward. Soldiers rushed in, weapons raised. But Valara moved like water, flowing between them with impossible speed. She didn't kill anyone, Ji-hoon noticed. She disarmed them, disabled them, but left them alive. Even now, even when fighting for her life, she remained a healer at heart. Go, Valara shouted. I will hold them. Not without you, Ji-hoon said, grabbing her arm. More soldiers were coming. Too many. Valara fought brilliantly, but she was still recovering, still weak. She couldn't hold them all off. Then, gunfire erupted from a different direction. But it wasn't aimed at them, it was covering them. Ji-hun saw Sumin at the entrance, her weapon firing over their heads at the soldiers behind them. "This way," Sumin shouted. "I have a vehicle. Move now." They ran. Valara stumbled, and Ji-hun caught her, supporting her weight. Minho and Daeyeon were right behind them. They burst out of the bunker into the night air. A military transport vehicle was waiting, engine running. They piled into the vehicle as bullets pinged off the armor. Sumin jumped into the driver's seat and gunned the engine. They rocketed away from the bunker just as another explosion collapsed the entire entrance. "What about your career?" Daeyeon shouted over the engine noise. "You're finished now." "I was finished the moment I saw that data and Taejin ignored it," Sumin said grimly. "I'm not going to stand by while billions die, because one man is too stubborn to admit he might be wrong." They drove through the forest on old service roads, the vehicle bouncing over rough terrain. Behind them, searchlights cut through the darkness. Helicopters were taking off. "They're going to track this vehicle," Minho said. "It has a GPS system." "I know," Sumin said. "We have maybe 20 minutes before they realize I've defected and lock onto us. We need a plan." "Get us to Seoul," Ji-hun said. "To the presidential residence. It's our only chance." "That's 3 hours away," Sumin said. "We'll never make it." Valara pulled out the communications device. "Then we ask for help. The Talrith dissidents, they have ships in orbit. If they can create a distraction, draw attention away from us." She sent a message. The response came quickly. "They agree," Valara said, reading the alien text. "They will make themselves visible to your military sensors. Create confusion. Give us time to reach Seoul." "They're risking their lives for us," Daeyeon said with wonder. "We are all risking everything," Valara replied. "Because this is bigger than any of us. Bigger than our individual survival." They drove through the night. Above them, the stars suddenly blazed with new light. 3 Talrith ships decloaked in orbit, making themselves visible to every sensor on Earth. Military communications channels exploded with activity. The focus shifted away from their small vehicle to the massive spacecraft hanging in the sky. Ji-hun sat next to Valara in the back of the transport. She was exhausted again, the fight having taken what little energy she had recovered. He held her hand, feeling her pulse steady and strong. "You're going to make it," he said quietly. "We all are. We're going to stop this weapon. We're going to show both our peoples that cooperation is possible." Valara smiled weakly. "You have such faith, such hope, even when everything seems impossible. This is what I admired about you from the beginning, this strength of spirit." "I learned it from you," Ji-hun said. "You gave up everything to do what was right. How could I do less?" The transport vehicle sped through the darkness towards Seoul. Behind them, the military scrambled to respond to the Talrith ships. Ahead of them lay the most dangerous part of their journey. They had to convince the president of South Korea to trust an alien defector and work with alien dissidents to stop a weapon that threatened all of humanity. It was an impossible task. But then again, everything they had done so far had seemed impossible, and they had succeeded through trust, courage, and the refusal to give up. As dawn approached on the horizon, Ji-hun looked at the faces of his companions. Valara, the warrior who chose healing. Daeyeon, the ranger who chose truth. Minho, the scientist who chose ethics. Sumin, the soldier who chose conscience. They were 5 people against the world. But they had something that their enemies lacked. They had hope. And sometimes, hope was enough to change everything. The presidential residence in Seoul was surrounded by security. Sumin had to use every contact she had, every favor owed, every connection made during her military career to get them past the outer checkpoints. The military was in chaos, responding to the Talrith ships in orbit. Some commanders wanted to attack. Others urged caution. The confusion worked in their favor. But at the final checkpoint, they were stopped. Guards surrounded the vehicle, weapons drawn. A senior officer approached, his face hard. Captain Han Suman, you are under arrest for treason, desertion, and aiding an enemy combatant. I need to speak to President Choi, Suman said calmly. It's a matter of national security. Global security. You'll be speaking to a military tribunal, the officer replied. All of you, out of the vehicle. Now, they complied slowly. Ji-hoon helped Valara out, supporting her weight. The guards' eyes widened when they saw her. Their weapons tracked her movements. Don't shoot, the officer commanded. Command wants this one alive. I am not your enemy, Valara said through the translator. I am here to save your people. Sure you are, the officer said with contempt. That's what they all say. Let me through. A woman's voice cut through the tension. The guards parted, and President Choi Ji-won walked into the checkpoint area. She was in her mid-50s, wearing a simple business suit. Her face showed intelligence and caution. Madam President, the officer said. Surprised. You shouldn't be here. This is a security situation. I am aware, President Choi said. I've been monitoring the situation, and I want to hear what they have to say. She looked at Valara with fascination. I've been president for 6 years. I never thought I'd meet an extraterrestrial being during my term. Madam President, this creature could be dangerous, the officer protested. This creature has a name, Ji-hoon said firmly. Her name is Valara, and she risked her life to warn us about an attack. President Choi studied them each in turn. Inside, all of you. We'll talk in the secure conference room. Officer, your men will stand down unless I say otherwise. The conference room was windowless and soundproof. President Choi sat at the head of the table. Ji-hoon, Valara, Dayan, Minho, and Suman sat across from her. 2 security guards stood by the door, but their weapons were lowered. You have 30 minutes, President Choi said. Tell me everything. They did. Valara explained the Talrith Empire's plans. Minho showed the data on his laptop, the projections of casualties, the timeline of deployment. Dayan described the military cover-up and Commander Taejin's refusal to listen. Sumin provided her intelligence reports. Ji-hoon spoke about finding Valara and the choice he made to help rather than report her. President Choi listened without interrupting. Her face remained neutral, but her eyes were sharp, missing nothing. When they finished, she was quiet for a long moment. This is an extraordinary claim. You're asking me to believe that an alien empire is planning a biological attack, and that one of their own people defected to warn us. I know how it sounds, Ji-hoon said, but the evidence is real. The threat is real, and we have less than 48 hours to stop it. If we do nothing, Minho added, 95% of humanity will die within weeks. President Choi turned to Valara. Why should I trust you? How do I know this isn't a trick? That you're not leading us into some kind of trap? Valara met her gaze steadily. You do not know. You cannot know with certainty. Trust always requires a leap of faith. But I can tell you this. I gave up my home, my honor, everything I have ever known to bring you this warning. If I wanted to harm you, there are easier ways. She's right, Suman said. I've analyzed her actions. Every choice she's made has been consistent with someone trying to help. She could have escaped alone. She could have tried to trade information for protection. Instead, she's asking us to work with Talrith dissidents to stop a weapon that will kill billions. The door suddenly opened. Commander Yoon Tae-jin strode in, his face red with anger. Madam President, I must protest. You're meeting with a dangerous alien without proper security protocols. I decide what protocols are necessary. Commander, President Choi said coolly. This is exactly what they want. The alien has manipulated these civilians into helping her. She probably has some kind of mind control ability. We need to detain her immediately, extract whatever information we can, and prepare for the real invasion. Taejin glared at Valara. These creatures cannot be trusted. And what do you base that on, Commander? President Choi asked. Basic military strategy. Every first contact scenario in our training assumes hostile intent. We cannot afford to be naive. He put a tablet on the table. I've prepared a full military response. We attack the ships in orbit before they can attack us. We show strength, not weakness. Did you look at the data they brought? Minho asked. The biological weapon is real. The deployment timeline is real. Your military response will accomplish nothing except trigger the exact attack we're trying to prevent. I don't believe your data, Tajin said. It's clearly fabricated. And even if some bioweapon exists, the proper response is to eliminate all Talrith presence before they can use it. Including the dissidents who are trying to help us? Dayon asked. The ones who risked their lives to give us information about the weapon? Especially them, Tajin said. They're the most dangerous. Enemies who pretend to be friends. President Choi raised a hand for silence. Enough. I need to make a decision, and I need to make it now. She looked at Valara. You say the dissidents can help us disable this weapon? How? We must board the diplomatic vessel in orbit, Valara explained. I can access the systems that control the weapon. With help from the dissident ships, we can neutralize the silencer before it is deployed. And how do I know you won't simply take control of the weapon for yourself? Tajin demanded. How do we know this isn't all a plan to steal Earth's defenses? You don't, Valara said simply. You must choose trust and cooperation, or suspicion and war. One path has a chance of saving your world. The other guarantees its destruction. President Choi stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was rising over Seoul. She looked at the city, at the millions of people who were depending on her to make the right choice. Commander Tajin, she said finally, I am relieving you of command of this operation. You are to stand down immediately. Madam President, this is a mistake. That's an order, Commander. Her voice was steel. I'm authorizing a joint operation with the Talrith dissidents. We will provide support for a team to board the diplomatic vessel and disable the weapon. Tajin's face went red. You're trusting them over your own military? Over everything we've trained for? I'm trusting the evidence, President Choi said, and I'm trusting people who risked everything to bring us the truth. Yes, it's a risk. Yes, I could be making a terrible mistake, but I'd rather take that risk than do nothing and guarantee extinction. This will end in disaster, Tajin said coldly, and when it does, the blood will be on your hands. He stormed out of the room. President Choi turned back to the group. You have your authorization. Captain Suman, you're reinstated and placed in command of the ground coordination team. Minho, I need you working with our scientists to understand the weapon's mechanisms. Dayon, you'll work with Suman on logistics. She looked at Ji-hoon and Valara. You too. You're going on the mission to disable the weapon. Madam President, Ji-hoon said, surprised. I'm just a medic. I'm not trained for this kind of operation. No, but you understand Valara's biology better than anyone. If she's injured during the mission, you're the only one who can keep her alive long enough to complete it. President Choi's face was serious. I'm not going to pretend this isn't dangerous. This is a mission with a very low probability of success, but it's the only chance we have. Valara stood up, bowing slightly. Thank you for your trust. I will not fail you. See that you don't, President Choi said. Because if you do, it won't just be your species that judges you. It will be mine as well. The next hours were a blur of activity. Sumin coordinated with the Talrith dissidents, establishing communication protocols. Minho worked with government scientists, analyzing the weapon data and planning the mission. Equipment was gathered, strategies discussed, contingencies planned. Ji-hoon checked and rechecked his medical supplies. He packed everything he might need to treat Valara's unique biology. As he worked, his hands were steady, but his mind was racing. In less than 24 hours, he would be boarding an alien spacecraft to disable a doomsday weapon. It was insane. Valara found him in the preparation room. She looked stronger now, more like the warrior she had been before her injuries. But her eyes were soft when she looked at him. "You do not have to do this," she said. "I can request another medic. Someone with more combat training." "No," Ji-hoon said firmly. "We started this together, we finish it together." "You might die," Valara said quietly. "The mission is extremely dangerous. The ship will be heavily guarded. Even if we succeed, escape may not be possible." "I know." Ji-hoon finished packing his supplies and turned to face her. "But some things are worth dying for. You taught me that." Valara stepped closer. She reached out and took his hands, the way she had at the crash site when they first met. Her golden eyes searched his face. "When I first touched you," she said softly, "I sensed your compassion, your desire to heal. It was so pure, so strong. I had never felt anything like it." She paused. "My people lost that. We forgot what it means to care for others, to put their needs above our own. But you reminded me. You showed me that it still exists in the universe." "It exists in you too," Ji-hoon said. "You gave up everything to save a world you'd never seen. That's compassion, that's heroism." "We saved each other," Valara said. "You healed my body. I remembered my soul. And together, perhaps we can heal the divisions between our peoples." Outside, the sun set on Seoul. The Talrith dissident ships moved into position. The diplomatic vessel hung in orbit, unaware that its secrets had been exposed. The mission would launch at midnight. Ji-hoon looked at Valara, this alien woman who had crashed into his life and changed everything. He thought about the choice he had made in the forest, to help rather than report her. It had seemed so simple then, one injured person needing medical care. But that one choice had led to this moment, to humanity standing at a crossroads, to the possibility of peace instead of war, to hope instead of extinction. Sometimes the biggest changes started with the smallest acts of kindness, a bandage applied to a stranger's wounds, a hand extended in trust, a choice to see a person instead of an enemy. President Choi's voice came over the intercom. "All teams, prepare for mission launch. May whatever gods you believe in watch over you." Ji-hoon picked up his medical pack. Valara adjusted her equipment. Together, they walked toward the launch bay. The fate of two worlds rested on what they would do next. The shuttle that carried them to orbit was one of humanity's newest designs, but it felt primitive compared to the Talrith dissident ship that waited for them. Ji-hoon watched through the window as they approached the alien vessel. It was beautiful, all curves and flowing lines, like it had been grown rather than built. The docking process was smooth. When the airlock opened, they were met by 3 Talrith dissidents. They looked similar to Valara, with the same blue-tinted skin and golden eyes, but their armor was different. Marked with symbols Ji-hoon didn't recognize. One of them stepped forward and spoke in the musical Talrith language. Valara responded, and their conversation grew animated. Finally, she turned to Ji-hoon. "This is Kieran. He commands the dissident fleet. He and I trained together before the fracture." Her voice was warm. "He says it is good to see me alive." Kieran spoke again, and the translator device rendered his words into Korean. "Your companion, this human, he is the one who saved you?" "Yes," Valara said. "Park Ji-hoon. He is a healer of his people, and more than that, he is my friend." Kieran studied Ji-hoon with those unsettling golden eyes. Then he did something surprising. He placed his hand over his heart and bowed slightly. "Then he is our friend as well. Any who would risk themselves for another, regardless of species, has honor." They were led through the ship to a briefing room. The dissident fleet consisted of 3 vessels, with a total crew of about 200 Talrith, who opposed the invasion. Kieran explained the plan using holographic displays that floated in the air. "The diplomatic vessel is here," he indicated a point in orbit. "It has a crew of 50, mostly military. The silencer weapon is stored in the cargo bay in a containment unit. To disable it, we must access the control systems and corrupt the activation sequence." "What's the security like?" Suman asked. She had come aboard to coordinate the assault, Extreme, Kieran replied. They know of the dissidents. They know someone leaked information. The ship is on high alert. We estimate resistance will be immediate and fierce. Can we fight through that many? One of the human soldiers asked. No, Kieran said bluntly. Direct assault would fail. Instead, we use deception. He manipulated the hologram. One of our ships will fake a system failure and request emergency docking. This is an old Talrith tradition, to never refuse aid to a disabled vessel. They will allow us to dock. Once inside, a small team can reach the cargo bay, while the rest engage security forces as a distraction. Who goes for the weapon? Suman asked. Valara must, Kieran said. Only she has the access codes and biometric signature, and one other to provide support. I'll go, Jihoon said immediately. Jihoon, no, Valara protested. This is the most dangerous part. You should stay with the main force. You might get injured, Jihoon said simply. You need a medic, and I'm the only one who knows how to treat you. Valara looked like she wanted to argue, but Kieran interrupted. He is right, and he has proven himself already. I have heard the story of how he found you, how he chose to help rather than harm. That is the kind of courage we need. The plan was set. They would launch the operation in 2 hours. Jihoon spent the time checking his medical supplies and trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Valara found him in the small room they had given him to prepare. I do not want you to do this, she said quietly. I do not want you in danger because of me. It's not because of you, Jihoon replied. It's because of what's right. Billions of people will die if we fail. How could I live with myself if I stayed safe while others risked everything? This is why I admire your species, Valara said. You understand sacrifice in a way my people forgot. You give yourselves for others without hesitation. She paused. If we do not survive this, I want you to know that meeting you changed me. You showed me that the universe still has light in it. That compassion is not extinct. We're gonna survive, Jihoon said with more confidence than he felt. We're going to disable that weapon, and then we're going to show both our peoples that cooperation is possible. They rejoined the others. The dissident ship began its approach, sending false distress signals. The diplomatic vessel responded exactly as predicted, granting permission to dock for emergency repairs. The moment the airlocks connected, the assault began. Dissident forces poured into the diplomatic vessel, engaging the security teams. Jihoon and Valara slipped away in the chaos, moving through maintenance corridors toward the cargo bay. They encountered their first guards at a junction. Valara moved with fluid grace, disarming them with precise strikes. But more came. A blast from an energy weapon grazed her shoulder, burning through her armor. She stumbled. Jihoon pulled her into cover. How bad? Not serious. Keep moving. But he could see pain in her face. They fought their way deeper into the ship. Each corridor brought more resistance. Valara was tiring, her wounded shoulder affecting her combat effectiveness. Jihoon did what he could, providing covering fire with a weapon he barely knew how to use, treating her injuries during brief lulls. Finally, they reached the cargo bay. The silencer's containment unit sat in the center, glowing with ominous light. Control panels surrounded it, covered in Talrith symbols. I need 15 minutes, Valara said, moving to the controls. Can you hold them that long? I'll try, Jihoon said, positioning himself at the door. Valara's hands moved across the controls with practiced speed. But alarms were blaring now. The ship's crew knew where they were. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. The door exploded inward. Soldiers poured through. Jihoon fired his weapon, more to create noise and confusion than with any hope of actually hitting anything. But it bought seconds, precious seconds. Then something slammed into his chest. He flew backward, hitting the wall hard. Pain exploded through his ribs. He tried to stand but couldn't, his vision blurred. Through the haze, he saw a commander enter, larger than the other Talrith, wearing heavy armor. The commander raised a weapon, aiming it at Valara's back. "Traitor!" the commander snarled in Talrith. "You shame our entire race." Ji-hoon couldn't let it happen. Not after everything. He forced himself to move, throwing himself between Valara and the weapon. The blast hit him square in the chest. The pain was unlike anything he had ever felt. Fire and ice and tearing all at once. He collapsed to the floor, gasping. He could hear Valara screaming, see her abandon the controls to rush to his side. "No, no, no," she was saying, her hands pressing against his wound. "Ji-hoon, stay with me. Stay with me." "The weapon?" he gasped out. "Finish it." "I am not leaving you," Valara said fiercely. Tears were running down her face. Actual tears. He didn't know Talrith could cry. The commander was reloading, preparing to finish them both. But then Kieran burst through the door with dissident forces. A short, brutal fight followed. The commander fell. The cargo bay was secured. "The weapon," Kieran said urgently. "Can you finish?" Valara looked at Ji-hoon, then at the controls. Her face showed agony. The choice between completing the mission and staying with him. "Go," Ji-hoon whispered. "I'll be fine. Go." She hesitated one more second, then turned back to the controls. Her hands flew across the panels even as tears continued to fall. Ji-hoon watched her through dimming vision, thinking how strange it was. He had bandaged her wounds. Now, she was trying to save everyone, while he lay dying. Full circle, somehow. The containment unit's glow began to fade. Valara entered the final sequence. The weapon went dark. She had done it. The silencer was disabled. Valara rushed back to Ji-hoon. She cradled his head in her lap, her hands trying desperately to stop the bleeding. "I need medical supplies. Human medical supplies." "In my pack," Ji-hoon managed. The pain was fading now. That was probably bad. Valara found his medical kit and began treating him with shaking hands. She applied pressure to the wound, injected pain medication, did everything he had taught her about human anatomy during their time together. "You are not allowed to die," she said fiercely. "Do you understand me? You do not get to save everyone and then die. That is not how this ends." Ji-hoon tried to smile. "Bossy, I like it. Stay awake. Talk to me. Tell me about your home." Valara was working frantically, using both human and Talrith medical techniques. "Mountains," Ji-hoon said weakly. "I grew up in the mountains. My cabin, peaceful. You would like it." "Then you must show me," Valara said. "After this is done, you will take me to your mountains and show me your peaceful cabin. Yes?" "Deal," Ji-hoon whispered. The dissident forces held the cargo bay while Valara worked. Kieran's voice came over communications. "The silencer is confirmed disabled. We are withdrawing. All teams fall back to extraction points." "I need more time," Valara said into her communicator. "Ji-hoon is badly injured." "We do not have more time," Kieran replied. "The main fleet has detected our presence. They are sending reinforcements. If we do not leave now, we will all die here." Valara looked at Ji-hoon, then at the escape route. Another impossible choice. "Leave me," Ji-hoon said. "Get out. You did it. The weapon is stopped. That's what matters." "No," Valara said flatly. She stood up, lifting Ji-hoon in her arms. He was surprised by her strength. "I am not leaving you. You saved me. Now I save you. This is how it works." She carried him through the corridors at a run. The ship shook around them as the dissident forces fought their retreat. Explosions echoed. Alarms screamed. But Valara never stopped moving. Never put him down. Never left him behind. They reached the docking bay. The dissident ship was already pulling away. The gap was growing. "Jump," Kieran's voice commanded. "I will catch you." Valara didn't hesitate. She ran full speed and leaped across the gap between ships, still holding Ji-hoon. For a moment, they were flying through space, suspended between vessels. Then hands grabbed them, pulling them aboard. The airlock sealed. The ship accelerated away. Ji-hoon was laid on a medical bed. Valara refused to leave his side, as both Talrith and human medics worked to save him. The wound was serious, but treatable. He had been lucky. A few centimeters to the left, and the blast would have killed him instantly. He drifted in and out of consciousness over the next hours. Each time he woke, Valara was there, holding his hand, speaking softly to him, refusing to rest even though she was exhausted. Finally, he woke fully. The pain was manageable now. He could breathe without agony. He looked around and found Valara asleep in a chair beside his bed, her hand still holding his. He squeezed gently. Her eyes opened immediately. "You are awake," she said, relief flooding her face. "The doctors say you will fully recover." The damage was significant, but not fatal. "You saved me," Ji-hoon said. "You saved me first," Valara replied. "And you saved my people from becoming monsters. And you saved your people from extinction. I think, perhaps, we are even." Ji-hoon smiled. "What happens now?" "Now, we go home. To Earth. The Talrith Empire is in chaos. The dissidents revealed what happened, exposed the weapon, showed the galaxy what the military faction was planning. There is a civil war happening in our space. My people are fighting over their future." She looked sad. "It will take time to heal those divisions, but at least now there is a chance. And here on Earth, your president is negotiating with the dissidents for a formal alliance. Trade, cultural exchange, mutual defense. The beginning of something new between our species." Valara squeezed his hand. "And Commander Taejin has been removed from service. Captain Suman has been promoted and now leads the extraterrestrial response unit." "A happy ending," Ji-hoon said. "Not an ending," Valara corrected. "A beginning. There is much work to do, trust to build, understanding to forge, but the foundation is laid." 3 months later, Ji-hoon stood on the porch of his cabin in the mountains. The repairs had been completed after the military operation. Everything was back to normal. Mostly, Valara emerged from the cabin, carrying 2 cups of tea. She had stayed on Earth as a liaison between the Talrith dissidents and humanity, and she had chosen to make her home in Ji-hoon's cabin while the diplomatic mission was being established. "It is peaceful here," she said, sitting beside him. "I understand why you love these mountains." "I told you that you would," Ji-hoon replied. He accepted the tea, their fingers brushing together. In the valley below, they could see a new building under construction, a joint medical facility where human and Talrith doctors would train together, learning from each other's knowledge. Minho was heading the project. Dayon had been appointed as the liaison between the facility and the local government. "Ji-hoon," Valara said softly, "that moment at the crash site, when I seized your hands, I was looking for your intention, trying to sense if you would harm or help." "I remember," Ji-hoon said. "I felt something I did not expect. Not just compassion, but something deeper, a connection, as if we were meant to find each other." She looked at him with those golden eyes. "Do you believe in fate?" "I don't know," Ji-hoon admitted. "But I believe that sometimes the universe gives us chances. Chances to choose who we want to be, to choose compassion over fear, to choose hope over despair." "And you chose well," Valara said. She reached out and took his hand, the way she had that first time and so many times since. "I am grateful the universe brought me to you, even though it meant crashing my ship and being injured and hunted." Ji-hoon laughed. "Maybe next time we can meet under less dramatic circumstances." "Perhaps," Valara said with a slight smile. "But would it have meant as much?" They sat together on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. Somewhere in orbit, the Talrith dissident fleet maintained a peaceful presence. Somewhere in Seoul, President Choi was negotiating the terms of interstellar cooperation. Somewhere in the galaxy, a civil war was being fought over the soul of a civilization. But here, in this quiet cabin in the mountains, 2 people from different worlds had found something simple and profound. A friendship forged in crisis, a trust built on compassion, a bond that had saved two worlds. Valara rested her head on Ji-hoon's shoulder. He put his arm around her. And in that moment, they were not human and alien, medic and warrior, different species with different histories. They were just two souls who had found each other in the darkness and chosen to be light. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities, full of chances for connection, for understanding, for peace. All it took was one person willing to extend a hand, one person willing to bandage a stranger's wounds and see not an enemy, but simply another living being in need. Everything that came after, all the changes and challenges and new beginnings, had started with that single choice. A human medic choosing compassion over fear. An alien warrior choosing trust over suspicion. And in the end, that had made all the difference.